Welcome to Stage Explorations, where we interview the theater creatives and artists from the theater world, those who perform on stage that the audience sees, and those behind the theater stage that the audience almost never sees. I am a journalist and theater fan, Buell Brown, and today's guest is...
My name is Alex Lyras. I am the writer-director of Aristotle Alexander. If you want to hear more about the play, tune into this conversation.
For my first question, when did you fall in love with theater, and why did you have to be part of the theater world?
Good question. I just remember, um, I think the first time my family was in London, and my dad had gotten tickets, some client or some business associate had given him tickets to Carmen. And it was just exciting. We were like in the third row, and the lights went down, and dum dum da dum dum dum. The overture started. I remember my dad leaning over, being like, "This is the overture." And then the curtains opened up, and it was just magic. It was. I'll never forget it. I'm curious what theater was. It was somewhere in the West End, but it was so powerful that I was transfixed, and my sister was transfixed, and so I don't know if I at that moment knew I was gonna pursue that this whole thing, but it was an unforgettable moment. I look back now and just being dazzled by the magic.
When did you fall in love with writing? When did it go from an interest to an obsession? Why did you want to create the magic that you saw a while ago?
Yeah, I think in college, I had a good year for dialogue when I was in high school. I had a really good high school experience and teachers that cared, and English, reading books was interesting. But so I learned I had got a good foundation in high school, but it wasn't until college when I became a philosophy major that I really got obsessed with writing and ideas, and reading everything from the ancient Greeks to Sartre and Nietzsche and the existentialists, and realizing that there was a practical application for philosophy. There was this genre of literature that Albert Camus and playwrights, French playwrights and Russian playwrights could address serious issues and questions. So I think college was the answer to that question.
I always like asking this question. Theater experience, why is it such a unique format for both the audience and the actors?
Yeah, it's tactile, it's live, it's kinetic, it's literal. Um, that energy is it's fascinating. Audiences are alive, and each one is different, and they breathe and react with you, and um, so I think being there is amazing. And especially now when we're more than ever confined to entertainment in our homes, and you go out to the theater, and the experience is really, to me, it's always rewarding. You may hear someone else laugh or gasp at something that you didn't react to the same way, but so it expands your awareness sideways and not just to the stage. And they say audiences begin to breathe together and laugh together and become this kind of cohesive unit, and that is symbiotic with the performers on the stage. So yeah, the live element will never go away, and it's always the magic of the experience.
Where did the ideal come from for your play, Aristotle, Alexander, and why did you have to write this play?
um I knew a lot about Greek history. There's a few periods. There's the Golden Age of Pericles, which is about 450 BC, where they build the Parthenon. And as that time declines and Athens loses the Peloponnesian War to Sparta, some really negative things happen. Democracy crumbles, and there's a period called the 30 Tyrants. And I kind of stopped my education about ancient Greece there, thinking, it was depressing, and I didn't want to talk about the negative historical aspects. But then you have, at the worst point in Greek democratic history, you have the height of philosophy. So Plato and Aristotle are practicing and teaching during this period, and with the highs are the lows, or vice versa. With the lows come the highs. So it becomes really interesting looking at 390, 380, 370 BC, where Greece is a bit of a shambles, but you have the height of comedy in the theater. You have plays and festivals peaking. You have philosophy peaking. So that's the period of beginning of Hellenism, and this is where Alexander the Great comes into fruition. And you see Aristotle leave Athens and go up to tutor Alexander the Great. And it's referenced in books. There's several books behind me that I've read that have a moment where this scene takes place. They'll dedicate a few pages to Aristotle tutoring Alexander the Great in the 3-volume Alexander the Great book behind me, but you don't really get into it. And I don't know if literary writers got intimidated by trying to explain the philosophy, which is a little complicated. Aristotle's philosophy is very complicated in some instances. But I knew that it was real. I knew that it was fascinating to have two figures of this stature cross paths, and not just cross paths, but butt heads. I mean, this is a teacher-student debate in a lot of ways. So it was inherently dramatic. It was something that I imagined could be in, the catalog for a theater company's year, one that they send out to all their patrons. Like, you open that up and you see a title and a blurb, and do you want to buy tickets for the season or buy tickets to that? I said, oh yeah, I think that can sell as well. I think this idea can sell as well. Everybody knows a little bit about these two. So that was the kind of the birth of the idea, and also the ability to go back to Greece, to go back to these areas and visit them. Is pretty amazing. We can go to Aristotle's home. We can go to his school in Athens. There's a phenomenal museum in Pella, in where the castle was for Alexander the Great's father, Philip. And I mean, it's just one of the coolest museums in the world. They built a museum over King Philip's tomb, which they found in the 70s. And it's been verified, and the artifacts are amazing. So to go there and write there, also the school, Aristotle's school in Mieza, was part of the compelling inspiration for creating the play. And in the play, incidentally, I have a lot of sound effects. I have cicadas, because it's the summer and the cicadas are going, and I have crickets and goats, and all of them I recorded at the location at Aristotle's school. So there is an immersive authenticity to the sound design of the show.
Aristotle, Alexander, tell us the story arc and the characters in your play.
There's 4 characters, Aristotle and Alexander, and then Alexander's mother, Olympias, who is a really fascinating character as she tries to get her son to the throne. And then there's Isocrates, who was a philosopher that was a contemporary with Socrates, but he's a totally different character and real historical person. So Isocrates is kind of the Iago figure of the play. He doesn't trust Aristotle. Aristotle is younger, and Aristotle's really more of a scientist than a philosopher. He's a biologist and a naturalist. And Isocrates is a rhetorician. He teaches people how to defend themselves in court and how to speak publicly. And he doesn't quite understand what Aristotle is doing. So the arc of the play starts with Olympias telling her son that he has divinity in his blood, that she had an affair with Zeus, and Alexander was the result, and he's basically a demigod. And Aristotle comes along and says, that's just stories. Let's get some facts. Let's use logic. Let's be rational. So he and Alexander are constantly butting heads about things like mythology and Alexander thinks Pegasus is real, and Aristotle says, show me one. And little by little, Aristotle's rationality starts to creep in, and Alexander realizes that there's some positive factors in being able to think rationally and being able to use logic. So he becomes influenced by him. And Isocrates is trying to tell Olympias, Alexander's mom, not to trust Aristotle, that nobody really knows what he's doing, and he kind of is in exile from Athens. And there's another part of the arc which is interesting, which is Alexander influencing Aristotle, because Alexander is so brash and strong that Aristotle realizes he needs to have some of that bravado too if he's going to go back to Athens and open his own school.
Is it easy or more difficult to create a play based on real history and real persons? Is there more of a stress, or easier? Does the story flow easier out of you because you already know the story in a way?
Yeah, I think, anytime you're handling a historical event, it's challenging. If you get it wrong, you're gonna piss a bunch of people off who have dedicated their lives to studying this stuff. And but this was a really ripe for creativity because there's a lot that we know about the time period. Isocrates, for example, we have his letters that he wrote to Philip, and we know what Aristotle was writing at the time and studying at the time. So we have his writings, and then there's a lot of history written about Alexander. It's written hundreds of years later. Some of it is close to the time that Alexander was there, but we have stuff from Marcus Aurelius and Strabo and all these other writers who are writing years later. But a lot of it feels legit. So you have to include that in this. You can't just wing it. But that part was fun because I've dedicated a lot of time to the research. And then there's the stuff that we can think happened. Certainly, in 3 years of educating Alexander, they must have had their arguments and their tiffs and their fights. Alexander was royalty, and I'm sure he was very arrogant and entitled. And Aristotle was potentially on the spectrum. He was a genius to such a degree that he must not have related to people like a normal person. They call his nickname was the Brain. So I think yeah, this was tricky. It's always tricky to reenact something historical, but it's also the fun part of the challenge.
What are the main themes of Aristotle and Alexander?
It's about education in a lot of ways, and it tackles a bunch of subjects that are relevant today. It's talking about how democracies decay. It talks about how tyrants seize power. In ancient Greece, there were good tyrants and bad tyrants, but a tyranny was not a democracy. It was a one man rule. So sometimes there was a tyrant who would change things for the better. And so tyranny is a theme. Another theme is kind of a proto-feminist theme where Olympias challenges Aristotle about Aristotle's writings about women, because Aristotle was quite brilliant about some things and rather stupid about others. He thought women should be confined to the home. He didn't think they should vote. He didn't think they should be part of the political structure. So one theme is her just, using evidence against him, against Aristotle, to make the point that women are not only worthy but necessary for a healthy city. And then I think the final theme is just about what do we value? Do we value power alone? Alexander thinks that he want that war is the natural state of man, and he wants to conquer. And Aristotle says, what happens after you conquer? What happens after you win? Are you setting up a city to thrive, or are you just laying waste to everything? And this influence is probably the biggest influence that occurred in the time period where Alexander did not set fire to Persepolis. He did not burn down Susa like his father would have. He left these places intact. He learned about their cultures all the way through Hellenism spreads all the way through Egypt and Alexandria, and so that was probably Aristotle's influence to say, hey, these cultures have a lot to offer.
How is this play so relatable now?
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with it. Alexander just wants to say what the law is and have that be the law, and Aristotle is trying to imbue a little bit of a little bit of perspective into that by saying, you need to the if you don't have any law, it's going to come back to bite you. You need to have a system where people can rely on the system. So I think that's big. I think there's a lot of denialism versus hard science versus denialism. This is another big thing where Alexander's saying, why don't I just believe? People will believe what I tell them. Why can't I just tell them what I think and have that be the rules of the game? And Aristotle says, people still think the world is flat 200 years after Anaximander proved it's a sphere by seeing the Earth's shadow on the moon and a lunar eclipse. So, we're seeing some really strange reversions today where knowledge is threatening and science is threatening, and don't read certain books, and that cycle unfortunately repeats. So I think there's a lot of moments in the play that are crafted to make us reflective about what's going on now.
What do you want the audience to get out of Aristotle Alexander play?
Optimistically, I would say that philosophy and knowledge and education can have a positive effect on politics. It can inform, and we can learn from history. So, and I just hope it provokes some ability to critique what's happening now without getting really pessimistic. Democracies and the form of rule is cyclical. So one thing that we know now, as we see things changing, is that this won't last forever either. There are cycles to how things go. A lot of people who have seen the play have said this makes me want to go back to my books from high school and college and read about them and reinvigorate that. I feel like that's a victory, to have people. I think people are hungry for some deeper stuff. Everything seems consumable, too easily consumable and bingeable. So the play is dense with little what do you call it, Easter eggs that have double meaning, double entendre meaning, and hopefully people can spark some conversation after the play is over.
As the playwright, when you're sitting down and watching your current play, what are you looking forward to?
Oh, it never gets old. Watching actors find different nuances is a pleasure. Watching audiences react differently to the show is a pleasure. And then there's that moment where I directed this as well. So there's a moment where I wonder how I wrote this. I'm like, who wrote that? Who wrote this? And I think that's one of my favorite experiences, is to try and experience the show as just a layperson. Um, but I like being there. I like hearing it, and I look forward to going to tonight and seeing the show. And it's come together with so many other elements, like the score and music. Oh, I didn't mention Immerse Studios, which did the visuals. and the visuals are really awesome. A lot of those are also real from the locations. But that's a ride. Look, this is I've been at this for a while, and I want to touch on all visual, audio, everything.
Very important question. Why must viewers attend the production of Aristotle Alexander?
I think it's first and foremost, it's a really well produced piece of theater, and also it is a thought provoking, nonpartisan exploration of power and values and ethics. Can an ethical person gain political power and maintain political power in this cutthroat world? I mean, this is a very more and more relevant question. So I think it will provoke some thought, and I think it will inspire people. Just the audience seems to be leaving with a very inspired kind of feeling.
What questions and concerns do you want the viewers to take home after watching your play?
Yeah, for sure. I want people to question what they admire in a leader. Some leaders are eloquent and empty. Some leaders are soft spoken and actions speak louder than words. Some leaders have more tact than others. And I want people to leave thinking, what do I value in a person that's in charge? There is a theme in the play about, fantastical and mythological stories versus things that can be proved either through logic or through hard science. So don't be dazzled. It's about form over content. That's a very Aristotelian value, form over content. Let's talk about not what the dressing is and not what the pretty packaging, the wrapping is, but what's in the box. And so that's the foundation of logic. So I want people to get a little bit more critical about their choices.
Why is theater so vital? Good for the soul, but also a great place to challenge the mind too.
Yeah, theater is everlasting. It's communal, and that is, I think, the um, primary goal. And also, when you see an audience enter, we have really diverse audiences. I think Company of Angels is great for that. We have young and old. We have all races. We have just a group of people that are curious, and that's fun. Sometimes I'll go to a show or a concert, and it's very homogeneous, and doesn't take away from the pleasure, but I like this setup because you don't know who's going to walk in. We've had 13-year-olds, we've had name it, they come through. So that just brings you out again, brings you off your couch and into the world, and people react differently, and you get to share that. So theater is never going to die. There was a science fiction show. I can't remember. I think it was Station 11. I think it was. But um, there's a traveling Shakespeare group in this post-apocalyptic world, and they go and put the plays on at these various for these various post-apocalyptic communities. And I just smiled. And I said, well, that's real. It just brings back the idea that theater has cultural capital. It's like, there's no more TV, there's no more movies, there's no more cable because it's the apocalypse. But guess what? Theater is forever, and these people are and people are look forward to it. And someone who knows Shakespeare has now value in society that is worth something. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I always ask this question, as you know, ticket sales only cover about 30%. It's more, there's still, you need donations and grants and all like that. So I always ask this question, why are theaters so important? It needs the community's help and support in any way they can provide it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, without the community, you get kind of what's happening on Broadway. Broadway has become, a big commercial endeavor. It has been in the past, but you used to be a playwright. You could get produced on Broadway if you had a track record and an interesting play. And now it's become, I don't think that Broadway is aiming to appeal to New Yorkers or theater people. It's become a big spectacle, which is sad in a lot of ways. And tickets for Othello, which is Denzel, are $900, and tickets for the George Clooney play Good Night and Good Luck are also $900,000. So community theater is real, and it's for the same reason I just said. It brings people together, and then other things hatch from that. You can see connections occurring after the show, where people are birthing new creative ideas. It's tactical, it's hands-on, it's physical, and like I said, when all this other stuff gets wiped out, we're going to have these small local communities are going to be all we have left. So it's nice to be plugged in.
Is there anything else about the play that you want to mention that I haven't asked? Anything you want to make sure is people know about?
The play is it's 110 minutes, no intermission, so it zips along. It's like an hour 40, and it's a thought-provoking, borderline intellectual thriller that I think is really unique for the stage. It's historical, it's contemporary, it's definitely thought-provoking. My name is Alex Lyras. I'm the writer-director of Aristotle Alexander. I hope you take the time to experience a very unique group of people who are bringing to life a very fascinating period in time where the most powerful conqueror that the world has ever known, Alexander the Great, crosses paths and clashes with one of the most brilliant philosophers ever, Aristotle. So you're going to see some fireworks, that's for sure. I'll see you at the theater.
Thank you for listening or watching this podcast episode of Stage Explorations. To learn more about the theater creative and more theater creatives and artists on Stage Explorations, go to www.stageexplorations.com. Once again, that is www.stageexplorations.com. There is no space between stage and explorations. You may find more videos, podcasts, and information about this theater creative and other theater creatives and artists on Stage Explorations YouTube channel. Looking forward to seeing you in the theater.